As promised, we turn to two very special guests who've actually cast momentous votes in Congress. Democratic Congressman Tom Perriello was one of the freshman Democrats in the swing district who backed Obamacare. Perriello won his Virginia seat by under half a point. Many warned that vote could cost his seat. He says it did, but he's never regretted it. Both former representatives are from Virginia. The other is Republican Congressman Tom Davis, who voted to impeach Bill Clinton and led his party's election strategy as chair of the House Republicans' campaign arm. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Congressman Perriello, what does it mean when people go to the House floor, as you say you did, really knowing it's a big, important vote, but it also might literally end their House career?
Well, this is a very, very serious event. Anytime you're talking about impeachment, it's serious because this involves national security and the abuse of power. This is something I think members on both sides are going to live with the rest of their life, and I hope they all take it with that level of seriousness. When you think about the leverage a president has, leverage we've seen presidents of both parties use to protect our troops, to get human rights prisoners out of jail, to choose to use that leverage in the way that he did is something that has enormous national security implications.
But I'm curious,
I think people should approach it with that seriousness.
Just drilling down on the situation, you must have given extra thought to a vote that might end your political career as opposed to other votes.
Well, what I can say to Republican electeds out there is being a former member is a much better life than being a member. And so if you're thinking about spending the rest of your life living with whether you stood up for the Constitution and the country and did your duty, I think that's one people will be really happy to live with. I know a lot of the Republican senators, particularly those under the age of 50, are not excited about having to take this vote and answer for it for a lot of years, but we're still at the trial stage. So I think it's going to be important to present the evidence for people to take that with the seriousness that it deserves and then cast a vote they can live with.
Congressman Davis, what are the lessons learned in your view?
Well, first of all, I was in the leadership and advised against bringing impeachment up against President Clinton. We'd, as you know, suffered setbacks in the 1998 midterm elections because we raised impeachment and basically ginned the Democratic base out in an off year. And at that point, only the second time in history, the president's party picked up seats. So I thought it was not a good political strategy. But once faced with it, to me, I was very late in deciding. My district was overwhelmingly against impeachment. I felt that lying under oath, albeit a civil proceeding, was a standard that whether you're a CEO, a janitor, a baseball player, this was a standard that we needed to make our mark.
Just to be clear, both of you in sort of what might be called at times swing districts in Virginia. So you're making the point that whatever one thinks of the underlying issue, it wasn't necessarily an easy vote for you either.
I don't think this is an easy vote for anybody. Removing a president is a very, very serious thing, and it's never pleasant having to face that. I give Democrats on that. I don't think it's come easy. Their base may like it, but for members, this is a tough vote.
Interesting. And so what do you see then for Republicans in the Senate?
Well, let's first of all, you had Jeff Flake on earlier. You saw what happened to Jeff Flake when he spoke out against the president.
Yep.
Republican base hasn't moved. Right now, the House votes resembles more of a no-confidence vote than it does an impeachment vote. Even the Clinton vote at the end of the day, only 5 Democrats voted for any article of impeachment and only 3 Republicans voted against it. Really, to be successful in a divided country, you need to bring part of the other party over. That has not happened to date here.
Congressman Perriello?
You know, 100% of the independents in the House voted to proceed. It is a tough vote for everybody. I think a lot of Americans started to tune out the noise months ago. I think they're going to tune back in, understanding that this is something serious, whether you agree with it or not. And I think you will. Some of it is going to actually depend on facts and depend on the evidence presented, whether people see this as an abuse of power and a national security issue, or do they see this as partisan bickering. And I think with the way that it's proceeded so far, which has been with a great deal of seriousness and professionalism, I think we'll see that case play out. The American people certainly are more inclined in that direction than they were a few weeks ago. But this is we got a few weeks ahead.
And Congressman Davis, what do you see as important, having been in those rooms that most of us never go into, when the House does present these hearings? Obviously, both sides can go into corners, right, and say, treat him like he's guilty, or there's nothing to see here and no evidence, whether it's from an Army officer or anyone else, is going to be treated seriously on the right. What do you recommend they do?
Well, once you go out front, it changes a little bit. You know, you've got everybody watching. Of course, most of these members are from absolutely safe partisan districts. and their biggest fear if they want to come back is their primary election and not the general election. And I think that colors it on both sides a little bit. If you're a Democrat at this point and you're not rabid about removing Donald Trump, you're going to have a tough primary. And if you're a Republican, as we saw with Justin Amash, he couldn't win re-election after he came out of that. And I think that's in the back of everybody's mind.
Congressman Perriello?
Look, I think in the Senate in particular, where some of these senators, or all the senators, have to run statewide, you really are going to have a choice in some cases between where the base may be and where moderate and independent voters may be. But this has only happened a few times in history for a reason. That's because it's serious. We've seen, you've got to meet a high threshold. It appears that that's been met, at least to proceed with the inquiry. And these are serious charges. Obstruction of justice is a very serious charge. We don't know exactly what the articles will be. And again, when you're talking about using the leverage of the presidency in national security situations, as a former diplomat, I can tell you that's something presidents use on a daily and weekly basis.
And you're talking about the abuse of the country. Before I let you go, yes or no, do each of you expect any Republican senators to convict? Zero, or do you see any convicting? Perriello?
We're a long way from there. I would guess yes.
Yes. Davis?
I think we're just too far away. I think facts matter. With the facts developed to date, no, but there's a long way to go.
Well, you're both former politicians, but you both had a little bit of politician in you. Not a full answer to that question, but you answered a lot of the other ones thoughtfully, which we really appreciate given your experience. To both congressmen, thank you for joining us on our special tonight.
Thanks, Ari.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.